At my wife's funeral, I noticed her sister smiling. Not a polite, restrained smile, not the kind people force when they don't know what else to do with their face. A real one, calm, satisfied, like she was watching something go exactly as planned. I remember thinking, maybe grief just breaks people in different ways. I wanted to believe that it was easier than the alternative. The church was full, but it felt hollow. The air smelled of lilies and cold stone, and every sound seemed too loud, shoes scraping the floor, a child coughing somewhere in the back, the slow, deliberate breathing of the man standing next to me, who had to remind himself how to exist without his wife. That man was me. Laura's casket stood at the front, closed. They told me it was better this way, less traumatic, as if anything about this wasn't already unbearable. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My hands were shaking, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough that I kept them clasped together in front of me, fingers digging into skin. People came up one by one, murmuring the same phrases. She was such a beautiful soul. She fought so bravely. You're so strong. I nodded. I thanked them. I didn't correct them when they said she'd lost her battle. Laura hadn't lost anything. She'd endured. Her sister, Evelyn, stood a few steps away, dressed in black so sharp it looked intentional. Perfect posture, dry eyes. When someone hugged her, she patted their back lightly, already half turned toward the next person in line. Efficient, controlled, and smiling. I caught it twice before I was sure. The first time, I told myself I imagined it. The second time, I saw it clearly, her lips curling upward as the priest spoke about love, about devotion, about how Laura had left this world too soon. Evelyn glanced at the casket, then at me. Her smile widened. A cold pressure settled in my chest, slow and heavy. My mind searched for reasons, excuses. Maybe relief, I thought. They hadn't been close in years. Maybe this was freedom from something I didn't know about. But I knew Evelyn, or at least I thought I did. She had always been present in our lives. Too present, offering advice Laura never asked for, dropping by unannounced, making small, cutting remarks disguised as concern. You look tired, Laura. Are you sure he's good for you? I just want what's best for my sister. Laura never argued with her. She just went quiet afterward, like something inside her had folded in on itself. I remembered that now, standing there in the front pew, staring at the woman who shared my wife's blood and apparently none of her grief. When the service ended, people filed out slowly. Evelyn moved ahead of me, already speaking in a low voice to the lawyer we'd barely met a week earlier. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, familiar, confident. I didn't like that. I followed at a distance, close enough to hear her say, "We should schedule the reading as soon as possible." Laura was very particular. Particular, that was one word for it. That night, alone in our house, I sat on the edge of our bed and replayed the funeral in my head. The smile, the timing, the way Evelyn looked at me. Not with sympathy, but with something else. Anticipation. On the nightstand was Laura's phone. It had been there since the hospital. I hadn't touched it. I wasn't ready. Next to it lay a single envelope I hadn't noticed before. Thick paper. My name written on it in Laura's handwriting. Not shaking. Not rushed. Steady. I didn't open it. Not yet. The reading of the will was scheduled for 3 days later. Evelyn insisted on it. I heard her voice through the phone when the lawyer called to confirm. Calm and precise, like someone booking a dinner reservation, not closing a life. I spent those 3 days moving through the house like a guest. Everything still smelled like Laura, her shampoo in the bathroom, the faint lavender detergent on the sheets, the coffee grounds she never wiped off the counter properly. I kept expecting to hear her footsteps, her sigh when she sat down, the soft sound she made before speaking, like she was organizing her thoughts. I didn't open the envelope. I told myself it was respect. Truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of reading something written by a woman who already knew how this would end. Evelyn came by on the second day. She didn't knock. She never did. "I thought you might need help," she said, stepping inside before I answered. Her eyes scanned the house, calculating, assessing. "I'm fine," I said. She nodded but didn't believe me. You don't have to pretend with me. Laura always did. It exhausted her. That stung. Not because it was true, but because she wanted it to. She walked into the living room and sat down, crossing her legs neatly. The will is straightforward, she continued. Laura was very clear about her wishes. I washed her hands. Perfect nails. No trimmer. No hesitation. You've seen it? I asked. She smiled again. Smaller this time. Of course. She asked me to help her organize things months ago, when she got sick. Months ago. Laura had told me she was tired. That work was draining her. That Evelyn was checking in more. She never mentioned planning her death with her sister. I didn't know, I said. Evelyn tilted her head. You weren't meant to. Laura liked to keep things simple for you. After she left, I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the closed door. Something about her words kept echoing. Simple for you, like I was a child, like I couldn't be trusted with the truth. That night, I finally picked up Laura's phone. The lock screen photo was us at the lake last summer. She was laughing, hair pulled back, eyes half closed in the sun. She'd been sick then. I hadn't known it yet. I scrolled through her messages. Nothing unusual. Work, friends, Evelyn, texting often, too often, short messages, logistics, appointments. Then I found the drafts. Unsent emails, notes, pages of them. Some were mundane lists, reminders. Others were dated, precise, written, like instructions, names, account numbers, phrases like, if Evelyn challenges this, and only after my death. My stomach tightened. Laura hadn't been preparing to die. She'd been preparing for something after. The day of the reading, I arrived early. The lawyer's office was quiet, sterile, the kind of place where emotions go to be processed and filed away. Evelyn was already there, sitting straight, hands folded, expression neutral. She nodded at me like we were colleagues. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. Formal language, legal phrasing. I barely heard it at first. My focus kept drifting to Evelyn, to the way she leaned back, relaxed, confident. Then he paused. I'll begin with the special provisions, he said. Evelyn's posture shifted. Just slightly. Laura requested that these be read first. My name came up. Then hers. Evelyn's smile disappeared. For the first time since the funeral, she looked uncertain. I felt it then. Not relief, not grief. Recognition. Laura hadn't left things behind. She'd set them in motion. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and continued reading, his voice steady, almost indifferent to the shift in the room. Laura Mitchell states that the following provisions are to be executed in strict order, without exception. Evelyn leaned forward now. Her confidence hadn't vanished, but it had tightened, like a grip that suddenly realized it might slip. The lawyer read Laura's full name, then her date of birth, then something unexpected, a personal statement. That wasn't standard. I knew that much. He unfolded a separate page. My husband, he read, is not unaware. He is simply the only person I trust to understand what comes next. My chest went tight. Evelyn turned to look at me. Really look. Her eyes searched my face, trying to measure how much I knew. I gave her nothing. The lawyer continued. I am aware that my death will be treated as an ending. For some, it will be a relief. For others, an inconvenience. For one person in this room, it will be seen as an opportunity. Evelyn's jaw clenched. The lawyer paused, glanced up. I am required to continue verbatim. He did. My sister, Evelyn Carter, has always believed she knew what was best for me. She believed my life was something to be managed, corrected, quietly redirected. I felt my pulse in my ears. Evelyn shook her head once, sharply. This is inappropriate. The lawyer ignored her. For years, she controlled my access to money, to information, to decisions that were mine alone. She disguised it as concern. She relied on the assumption that I would never push back. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Evelyn stood. This is defamatory. I won't sit here and... Miss Carter, the lawyer said calmly, please sit down. This is a legally binding document. She sat slowly. Her hands were no longer still. The next page changed everything. Effective immediately upon my death, the lawyer read, all assets previously believed to be under my sister's informal oversight are placed into a temporary trust. The executor is instructed to audit all financial activity conducted on my behalf over the past 7 years. 7 years? Evelyn's face went pale. This includes, the lawyer continued, but is not limited to property sales, transfers, proxy signatures, and medical decision authorizations. Medical. I remembered the hospital, the way Evelyn spoke to doctors like she belonged there, the way Laura deferred, even when she looked afraid. Evelyn laughed suddenly, too loud. This is ridiculous. She was sick. She was confused. The lawyer didn't look at her. The trust specifies independent review by 2 medical boards. Silence, and, he added, any obstruction of this process results in immediate forfeiture of all potential inheritance. That word landed hard. Forfeiture. Evelyn stood again. You can't be serious. She wouldn't. She was, the lawyer said, and for the first time there was something sharp in his voice. He turned to me. Mr. Mitchell, your wife appointed you as the sole decision authority regarding the execution of these provisions. My mouth went dry. There is more, he said, but it requires your confirmation to proceed. Evelyn's head snapped toward me. Her eyes burned now. Not grief, not shock. Fear? Don't do this, she said quietly. You don't know what you're agreeing to. I thought of the envelope on the nightstand, of Laura's handwriting, of the drafts on her phone. I think, I said slowly, I do. The lawyer nodded and turned the page. This next section, he said, details the conditions under which Miss Carter may retain any claim at all. Evelyn sank back into her chair, and for the first time since the funeral, she wasn't smiling. The lawyer stopped reading and slid a second folder across the table. This one was thinner, older. The edges were worn like it had been handled many times. Before we continue, he said, you should understand that your wife anticipated resistance. Evelyn let out a quiet, bitter laugh. Of course she did. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, bank statements, authorization forms, medical consent records. Each page was marked with dates, signatures, and annotations in Laura's handwriting. Not emotional notes, factual, methodical. She documented everything, the lawyer said, privately, over several years. I felt a slow, sick realization settle in. Laura hadn't been paranoid. She'd been patient. The first document showed a property sale, a small apartment I'd never known about, purchased in Laura's name, sold 3 years later. The proceeds transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Evelyn shifted in her chair. That apartment, the lawyer said, was sold without Mrs. Mitchell's direct involvement. The signature authorizing the sale was executed under a medical proxy. I looked at Evelyn. You told me Laura didn't want to deal with real estate stress. She didn't answer. The next document was worse. Medical records, not diagnoses, but approvals, adjustments to treatment plans, consent for medication changes, all authorized by Miss Carter, the lawyer said, tapping the page. At times when your wife was fully competent. Evelyn leaned forward. I was helping her. She asked me to. Then you won't mind the review, the lawyer replied. The folder kept going. There were emails Laura had saved, printed, and highlighted. Messages where Evelyn framed decisions as urgent, where she warned Laura that I wouldn't understand, where she pushed for control inch by inch. I remembered the fights Laura and I never had, the conversations that ended early, the way she'd say, it's handled, and change the subject. She'd been protecting something, or someone, or herself. At the time of her diagnosis, the lawyer continued, Laura amended her will, quietly. She anticipated that her illness would be used to question her capacity. Evelyn's face darkened. She was sick. She was careful, he said. I turned the last page. It was a letter, addressed to me, not sealed, not emotional, precise. If you're reading this in this room, Laura had written, then Evelyn believes she has already won. That means the conditions are right. My throat tightened. She knew, I said softly. The lawyer nodded. She also knew this would only work if you stayed exactly who you are. Evelyn stood abruptly. This is manipulation. She used you. I looked up at her. No, she trusted me. Silence stretched between us. The lawyer cleared his throat. There is one more element you should be aware of before we proceed. He slid a final document forward. A delayed disclosure, he said, filed with the court, set to activate upon your confirmation. I read the heading. Notice of irregular financial activity pending investigation. Below it was Evelyn's name. Repeated, highlighted, linked to amounts I didn't want to imagine. Evelyn's voice dropped. If you go through with this, you destroy everything. I thought of Laura, lying in a hospital bed, listening while her sister spoke for her. No, I said. I finished what she started. The lawyer nodded once. Then, he said, we moved to enforcement. Things moved quickly after that. Not loudly, not dramatically. The kind of movement that happens behind closed doors, in emails marked confidential, in phone calls that start with per, our earlier conversation. Evelyn left the lawyer's office without another word. No threats, no tears, just a tight nod and a promise, unspoken but clear, that this wasn't over. She was wrong. The trust activated within hours. Accounts were frozen. Notifications went out to institutions I'd never heard of, but Laura had. The lawyer explained it all calmly, like he was describing a routine process. Temporary restrictions. Independent auditors. Mandatory disclosures. Your wife was thorough, he said. She left very little room for improvisation. That evening, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. Blocked calls. Voicemails left in quick succession. I didn't listen to them at first. I sat in the kitchen instead, staring at the envelope on the table. Laura's handwriting. Still unopened. By the next morning, the tone changed. Evelyn stopped calling. Her attorney did. He was polite, controlled. He spoke about misunderstandings, about grief, about how stress can distort perceptions. He suggested mediation, a pause, time to breathe. There's no need to escalate this, he said. I pictured Evelyn's smile at the funeral. It's already moving, I replied. I'm not stopping it. That afternoon, the first report came in. Preliminary. Incomplete. Enough. Unaccounted transfers. Repeated proxy use. Funds routed through short-term holding accounts and returned just clean enough to avoid casual scrutiny. Not enough to avoid what Laura had set in motion. The lawyer called it a pattern. 2 days later, a second report confirmed something worse. Medical authorization signed during periods when Laura's doctors later confirmed she was fully lucid. Decisions that delayed treatments. Adjustments that conveniently increased Evelyn's access and control. I felt sick reading it. Not angry. Not shocked. Cold. Evelyn showed up at the house that night. She stood on the porch for a long time before knocking. When I opened the door, she looked smaller somehow. Not weaker. Exposed. We need to talk, she said. I know, I replied. That's why I won't. She tried anyway. She spoke about family, about mistakes, about how Laura had always been dramatic, always exaggerating slights. She blamed fear, pressure, love. I was protecting her, she said, from you, from herself. I didn't raise my voice. You protected yourself, I said. Her face hardened. She's dead. I nodded. And she still saw you coming. She left without another word. 3 days later, the formal notice arrived. Investigation expanded. Assets seized pending review. Evelyn's name flagged. Not publicly, not yet. That was the part Laura understood best. The real damage doesn't start with exposure. It starts with isolation. I finally opened the envelope that night. Inside was a single page. This will get ugly before it gets quiet, Laura had written. When it does, remember, you don't owe her closure. You owe yourself truth. I folded the letter carefully and put it back. Outside, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Evelyn. It was the bank. The bank meeting was short, precise, unforgiving. They didn't accuse. They didn't speculate. They asked questions that already had answers. Dates, amounts, authorizations, names. Evelyn's name came up again and again, tied to transactions that no longer had anywhere to hide. This will move beyond internal review, the woman across the table said. Soon, I nodded. I didn't feel relief. What I felt was distance, like I'd stepped far enough back to finally see the shape of the thing Laura had built. Evelyn didn't wait for soon. She came back 2 nights later. This time, she didn't knock. She pounded. I opened the door to a woman I barely recognized. Her hair was pulled back too tight. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from lack of sleep. Control had slipped, and she didn't know how to hold herself without it. You think you're clean in this? She hissed. You think she didn't use you? I stayed in the doorway. I didn't invite her in. She married you because you were safe, Evelyn continued. Predictable. You were cover. You still are. I felt it then. Not anger. Clarity. She married me, I said, because I listened when you didn't. Evelyn laughed, sharp and ugly. She hated you sometimes. You know that, right? Yes, I said, and she trusted me anyway. That stopped her. For a second, her face cracked, not with guilt, but with fear. Real fear. The kind that comes when someone realizes the story they've told themselves no longer works. You don't understand what she was like before you, Evelyn said. You didn't see how weak she was, how lost. I saw exactly what she wanted me to see, I replied. And she saw you. Evelyn's voice dropped. If this goes public, I lose everything. I met her eyes. You lost it when she stopped being silent. She stepped back, not defeated, cornered. The next morning, the news broke, not loudly, not everywhere, but in the places that mattered. Professional notices, legal filings, quiet suspensions, Evelyn's accounts frozen, her business partnerships under review. People stopped returning her calls. That was when she finally understood. She sent one last message. Not angry, not threatening. Tell me what she said about me. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I deleted it. The final letter arrived a week later. Laura's handwriting again, this time slower, softer. You'll be tempted to explain her, she wrote. Don't. People like her survive on being understood. Let her be seen instead. The investigation concluded quietly. Charges followed. Not dramatic, just final. Evelyn didn't come to the hearing. I did. I sat in the back, alone, and listened as her name was read aloud without affection, without power, just facts, just consequences. When it was over, I went home. The house was quiet, not empty. For the first time since the funeral, I slept through the night. I visited Laura's grave alone. No flowers, no ceremony, just me, the stone, and the quiet she'd earned. The grass around it was freshly cut, too neat for what it marked. I stood there longer than I meant to, not thinking about Evelyn, not thinking about courts or money or names stripped of meaning. I thought about the first night Laura stayed over, how she lined up her shoes by the door, precise, careful, like someone who learned early that order was safety. I thought about the way she used to pause before answering questions that mattered, choosing honesty even when it cost her comfort. She'd known exactly how this would end. Evelyn took a plea deal, reduced charges, public record, but not front page news. Enough to end her career quietly. Enough that her name would follow her into every room she tried to enter next. No speeches, no apologies. Just absence. I received one final call from her lawyer weeks later, asking if I intended to pursue civil action. No, I said, this is enough. It was. Laura hadn't wanted spectacle. She'd wanted balance. The house sold faster than I expected. I kept only a few things. Her watch, the one she wore when she needed reminding of time, the notebook where she'd written nothing personal, only plans, and the envelope, now soft at the folds from being opened and closed too many times. People eventually stopped asking how I was holding up. They assumed time had done its work. They were wrong. It wasn't time. It was truth. I understood now why Evelyn smiled at the funeral. She thought she was watching the end of something. She didn't realize she was standing at the beginning. Laura hadn't needed revenge fueled by rage. She'd chosen something colder, cleaner, a design that required patience, trust, and one person willing to carry it through without flinching. She chose me. I left the cemetery and didn't look back. Some endings don't echo. They settle,